Oh, alright. Let me tell you. Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed Aleph, Daf 31 of Masechta Beitzah. Friends, it's a 3 Mishnayos Daf. We're going to talk about collecting wood, whether it's from the field or from like a karpaf. Friends, remember karpafos from Erevin? Don't worry. It's not, we're not going to get too far into karpafos, but in this case, it's just kind of like a closed off area. Then we get into another Mishnah that talks about chopping wood on Yom Tif. What do you guys think? Yay or nay? And then finally, whatever, like some more like muktzeh kind of things, like whatever. We'll get there. Alright, friends, here we go. We're on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, that's gewaldig. Okay, we're on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph. Mishnah, top of the page. Mevin eitzim min asode min amechunos. You hear that? You're allowed to bring in wood from the field as long as it's mechunos, as long as it's already gathered together. Okay, so if it's out in the middle, out in the open in the field, so as long as it's gathered together, you could chop it around. Now, but if it's coming from a enclosed area, so then even if it's scattered together, because it's already enclosed, it's considered like, it's already in one place and your intention was on it already from before Yom Tov. Ezu karpaf, what's considered a karpaf? What's considered this enclosed area that we're talking about? Kol shesamuch le'ir divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says, look, it has to be close by to the city. Rabbi Yossi Omer says, Rabbi Yossi kol shenichnasun lo bifosachas. So Rabbi Yossi defines this karpaf as an enclosed area that you need a key to get into. But even if it's not necessarily right next to the city, as long as it's within the 2,000 amis of Tchum Shabbos, that would be okay if it's a place that you get into with a key. Now, fact the Gemara, no, we're not there yet. But the Gemara does say, Amr Yehuda Amr Shmuel, says Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, Eitzim ela min hamechunosin shebekarpaf. Interesting. Friends, you hear this? Says Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, that when it comes to a karpaf, the wood needs to be gathered together. That you can only bring in wood from an enclosed area, and as long as the wood is gathered together. Now, one second. In fact, the Gemara va'anatanan min hakarpaf afilu min hamefuzarim. But one second. Why would Rabbi Yehuda be saying in the name of Shmuel that when it comes to a karpaf, that inside of a karpaf you can, the wood has to be gathered together already? But I thought our Mishnah said that in this karpaf, in this enclosed area, the wood can even be scattered because it's in an enclosed area. You already had it in mind from the day before, from before Yom Tov. So, what's the dealio? What is the dealio? That's what the Gemara wants to know. How come the Mishnah says that in the enclosed area they can be scattered, but Shmuel is saying that in the enclosed area it has to be collected together, gathered together already? Masnisin yichidahi. To which the Gemara answers, well, that Mishnah is not all that it was worked up to be. That Mishnah is specific, is a das yochid, essentially, is a singular opinion. And we don't necessarily paskin like our Mishnah because it's a specific opinion. What does that mean? The Tanya is we learn in a Beitzah. Reb Shimon ben Elazar says Reb Shimon ben Elazar that basically Reb Shimon ben Elazar quotes exactly like our Mishnah. The implication being that our Mishnah is specifically the opinion of Reb Shimon ben Elazar, but the Rabbanan would argue, and Shmuel is holding like the Rabbanan. What does Reb Shimon ben Elazar say? Lo nechleku beishamei v'silal al mufuzarim shebesados she'ein meviin. So it says Reb Shimon ben Elazar that it's unanimous, it's bipartisan. Both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel hold that if you have scattered wood in the field, forget about it. You can't bring it in, you can't use it. And both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that if you have wood that is gathered together in a karpaf, of course you could use it. What are the points of contention between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? Al-mufuzarin shebekarpaf, on wood that is scattered in a karpaf, in an enclosed area, but the wood is scattered. As well as wood that is gathered together, but it's out in the field. So it's out in the field, but it's gathered together. So again, when it comes to an enclosed area, but the wood is scattered, or if we're talking about a non-enclosed area, but the wood is gathered together, Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to use that wood. You're not allowed to bring in that wood and use it, because it's muktzeh. And Beis Hillel says you can bring it. It's not muktzeh. So, and that's exactly what our Mishnah says, right? That our Mishnah is saying that you're allowed to bring in wood that's gathered together in the field, or that's scattered in a karpaf, because that's the opinion of Beis Hillel, and that is like Reb Shimon ben Elazar. But the implication being, well, that's Reb Shimon ben Elazar's opinion, but the rabbis Mistama argue on that, and Shmuel is holding like the rabbis who are saying that in the karpaf you would not be allowed to use scattered wood. You'd have to use wood that's gathered together. Amar Ravit says, Ravit, Konim v'ale gefonim, leaves of reeds and leaves of grapevines. Afagavdi mechanfelu umosve, even though they are gathered together before Yontif, came the madle ziko mevaderlu. Well, since if one good geshmaka wind comes, it'll scatter them all and blow them away. Kimufuzarim damu, we have to treat them as though they are scattered. V'asurin, and they are osir, and they're not, and they're going to be muktzeh. They're going to be off limits, right? Because you have these leaves. The leaves they're easy to just blow away. Because they're easy to blow away, so therefore you don't have in mind that they're going to be there the next day, and you can't chaparain. V'asnach moname esmol alayu shapirdami. But if before Yontif already you put a weight on top of the leaves so that you can be confident that they will be in the same place tomorrow, and you could chaparain. So in that case, they would not be muktzeh, because you have intention that they'll be there the next day and that you will chaparain. Ezu karpav v'chule. What is this karpav? So we saw a machlokus between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda talks about it being close by to the city. Rabbi Yossi says, well, it can even be far away from the city as long as it's within Tchum Shabbos, but you have to have a key to it. So let's dig a little deeper over here. Ibailu. Uwa. So they want to know. Heichi ka'amar. How do we understand the machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi? Do we say, Kol shesamuch la'ir v'udi islei posachas? Are we saying that the way that Rabbi Yehuda defines this karpaf is that it has to be, right next to the city, and you have to have a key. Two criteria. It has to be close to the city, and it has to have a key. Also Rabbi Yossi lemeimar, and Rabbi Yossi is coming to say, a key? Came this le posachas. If we're talking about this enclosed area that has a key, well then afilu b'soch tchum Shabbos nami. If we're talking about this enclosed area that has a key, well then it can even be far away, as at the edge of the tchum Shabbos, if it has a key. If it doesn't have a key, so then memela it has to be close to the city. But if it doesn't have a key, it has to be close to the city. If it has a key, that you can only get in with a key, it can be as far away as the Tchum Shabbos will allow you to go. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, it would davka have to be next to the city, and it would have to have a key. So is that how to understand the machlokas? Dilma. So now, just to make one more point about that. So according to Rabbi Yossi, in that case, there's basically two ways that you could make this work. Right? There's two ways you can make it work. One is if you have this karpaf that's close to the city, even if it doesn't have a key. Or you can even have one that's far away at the edge of the Tchum Shabbos, but it would have to have a key. Right? Close to the city without a key, or far away with a key. So now, Udilma, or the other way to understand it, Hachi Kamer. This is what's happening. That what Rabbi Yehuda cares about is proximity. As long as it's close to the city, Rabbi Yehuda is happy. Key, no key, doesn't matter. Proximity is what's important to Rabbi Yehuda. But Rabbi Yossi lemeimar, and Rabbi Yossi comes to say, afilu b'soch tchum Shabbos, and Rabbi Yossi comes to say that it can even be as far away as tchum Shabbos, but v'davka de'islei posachas. But it has to have a key. Avaleisle posachas afilu samuch le'ir namilo. But if it doesn't have a key, then it doesn't work, even if it's adjacent, even if it's right next to the city. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to this version, what's important is proximity. As long as it's close by, it's considered a karpaf that you could, gather this wood from. And whether it has a key, whether it doesn't have a key, it doesn't matter, as long as it's close by. Now, according to Rabbi Yossi, what's important is if it has a key. If it has a key, then anywhere, as long as it's within Tchum Shabbos, have fun. Have a blast, or, whatever they say. So, but if there's no key, then even if it's right next to the city, it's not going to work. So friends, which version? Does it go by the version 1, that according to Rabbi Yossi, that according to Rabbi Yehuda, it has to be close to the city, and it has to have a key? And Rabbi Yossi is coming to say, look, if it's close to the city, it doesn't have to have a key. If it's far away, then it has to have a key. Or is it the second way, which is Rabbi Yehuda says that if it's next to the city, key, no key, doesn't matter. But if it's far away, it doesn't work. And Rabbi Yossi says, look, you have to have a key. As long as you have a key, close, far, it doesn't matter. Friends, what do you think? Tashma, well, come in here. Okay. Midiktani Rabbi Yossi Omer kol shenichnasim bo b'posachas va'afilu b'soch tchum Shabbos. From the fact that Rabbi Yossi says, look, if we're talking about that there's a key, then even if, as long as it's within the tchum Shabbos, it works. Shmamina Rabbi Yossi tarti likula ka'omar shmamina. It must be like the first way. That Rabbi Yossi is giving us 2 permitted ways of accessing this karpaf. One of them would be if it's close to the city, even if there's no key. And the second one would be, but if you have a key, it can even be as far away as the Tchum Shabbos allows you to go, 2,000 amis. Omer of Salah, Omer of Yirmiyah, halacha Rabbi Yossi lahakol. Says Rabbi Salah in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah that the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, to be lenient. I assume what it means is that, like we just explained, that there's basically 2 ways that it could work according to Rabbi Yossi, either close by, even if you don't have a key, or far away, as long as there is a key. Friends, what did you think about that? Pretty nice, right? Let's move on. Says the next Mishnah, Mevakin Eitzim, lo min hakoris, alright? So you're not allowed to just take a beam on Yom Tif and chop it up for firewood, because mistama, a beam is going to be used for construction, not for firewood. V'lo min hakoris shenishba b'Yom Tif. And let's say you have a beam that broke. So if you have a beam that broke, so then mistama, it's firewood. But if it breaks on Yom Tif, well then obviously you didn't have intention to be using it before Yom Tif, meaning before Yom Tif it was still not broken. So you were planning to use it for construction. On Yom Tif it broke, well then it's going to be muktzeh. So you can't use that either. And you can't chop with a axe, you can't chop with a saw, you can't chop with a sickle, but you can chop with a kupitz, with a cleaver. Now, frek the Gemara of Omar Reisha ein mevakin klal. The Gemara says, wait a second. The first part of the Mishnah says you're not allowed to chop wood. You can't chop beams. You can't chop broken beams. And then the last thing we say in the Mishnah is you could chop with a cleaver. What? I thought we just said you're not allowed to chop. Oh, what do we do? What do we do? We go weiter. Omer of Yehuda, Omer Shmuel, Chasoy Mechsa V'Achikatani. So it says of Yehuda in the name of Shmuel that you just got to massage the Mishnah a little bit. It's missing a few words. This is how you have to read it. In Mivakim and Asaver Shal Koris, you're not allowed to chop wood from a pile of beams. If you have a pile of beams that are set aside for construction, so you can't chop them up on Yom Tif. And you can't use a beam that broke on Yom Tif because it's muktzeh. You didn't intend before Yom Tif to be using it for firewood. Avol mevakin min hakor shenishba me erev Yom Tif. But, and here's the key, if the beam already broke on erev Yom Tif, so then coming into Yom Tif, you said, oh, amazing, I have a broken beam, I can use it for firewood. So you had intention for it. You were thinking about it already before Yom Tif. So then, sure, you can chop it up. But But if you want to chop up the wood, don't use an axe. V'lo b'magel, don't use a what's that called? What's that thing called when you saw things? What do you use to saw things? Dennis. What? I'm just kidding. It's called. Yeah, I know. It's called a saw. Anyways. Yeah. What are you gonna do with me? All right, let's move on. Wait. No, a mago is a sickle. V'lo b'magera, not with a saw. Al ela b'kupitz, but use a meat cleaver. You can chop the wood with a meat cleaver. All right. Tanam Yochi, we also learn in a brayso like this. And mevakin eitzim lo min hasaver shel koris. You can't chop wood from a pile of beams. V'lo min hakorish nishba b'yom tov l'fishenu min hamuchan. And you also cannot chop. You can't chop up a beam that broke on Yom Tov because you weren't prepared for it in advance. It's muktzeh. V'lo b'kardom. Says the Gemara. Okay, so you're not allowed to use an axe. Omer of Chidino bar Shlamyo mishmei derav lo shanu ela b'nekevus shelo hava b'zachrus shelo muter. So it says of Chidino bar Shlamyo in the name of Rab that when we say that you're not allowed to use an axe, you're not allowed to use a wide axe, but you're allowed to use a thin axe. Pshita. Okay, this is obvious. Bekupitz tanan. The Mishnah says you're allowed to use a kupitz, like a meat cleaver, which I guess is thinner than an axe. Like the blade is like thinner than an axe. I mean, as opposed to like a wider. I guess an axe is a wider blade, and a meat cleaver, I guess, is a narrower blade. So therefore, the Mishnah says, what does the Mishnah say? So the Mishnah says that when you're not allowed to use an axe, so if there's like two kind of blades on an axe, right? One like wider blade and one like narrower blade. So you can't use the wider one, but you can use the narrower one. So the Gemara says, Pshita, obviously you can use the narrower one because bekupitz tanan. After all, the Mishnah says you're allowed to use a meat cleaver, which is a narrower blade. Mauditema. So the Gemara says, well, I may have thought to say, hanimile kupitz lechude. I may have thought to say that when the Mishnah says that you're allowed to use a meat cleaver, it means you can use a meat cleaver when it's just that, when it's just a meat cleaver. Avokardum bekupitz. But if you use an axe that has like two blades on it, a front blade and a back blade, let's call it, and one of them is wide and one of them is narrow, Ema, I'll say, migo dahaigis osir, haigis anami osir. I might think to say, well, if the wider blade is osir, so then maybe the narrower blade is also osir, kamash malon. So what Rav Chidino bar Shlamyo is teaching us the name of Rab is that, no, we don't say that. Even though the wider blade is going to be osir, the narrower blade is going to be mutter. A seifa, that those who teach Rav Chidino bar Shlamyo's statement on the seifa, on the last part of the Mishnah, which is el bekupitz, that you're allowed to use a meat cleaver. Rav Chidino bar Shlamyo mishmei derav lo shanu ela bezachrus shelo. You're only allowed to use the where am I? Fine. So Rav Chidino, exactly. So Rav Chidino bar Shlamyo says that you're only allowed to use the narrower part of the meat cleaver. So if you have like a meat cleaver with like two blades on it, a narrower one and a wider one, so Rav Chidino bar Shlamyo says you can only use the narrower blade. But you wouldn't be able to use the wider blade on the meat cleaver. Pshita, this is obvious. V'lo b'kardom tanan. It says you're not allowed to use an axe. So if you're not allowed to use a wide bladed axe, well then you can't use the wide blade on the meat cleaver. Well, ma'udetema, I may have thought to say, hanimile kardom. Well, I may have thought to say, look, the Mishnah says you're not allowed to use an axe. Aval kupitz v'kardom. But if you have a meat cleaver that has a narrower blade as well as a wider blade, I may have thought to say, Ema migo dahaigis ashari, agisa nami shari. I may have thought to say, well, since the narrower blade on the meat cleaver is permitted, maybe the wider blade on the meat cleaver is also permitted. Kamash malon. Therefore, what Rav Chidino bar Shlamyo is teaching us in the name of Rab is that no, on the meat cleaver you can use the narrower blade, but you may not use the wider blade. Alright. Well, sounds like that's the opinion over here. Alright, now we get to the third Mishnah of the day. Bayishu male peris. Alright, if you have a house that's full of fruits, sounds very tasty. V'nifchas, and the wall fell down. Notal mimakom apchas. So you're allowed to take from the, stick your hand in and take some fruits. We're going to have to explain, the Gemara is going to explain what we're talking about over here. Rameir Omer says, Rameir, you can even sort of like break your own entry into the building and take the fruits. So the Gemara is going to have to explain what we mean. So now he says, look, I don't understand. How could it be that Reb Meir says that you'd be allowed to just breach the wall yourself and chop the fruits? If you do that, you're going to be breaking the house or whatever. It's in this space. It's in this structure, a container, a building. There's fruits in there. How could Reb Meir say that you could just destroy the house and take the fruits, but you're breaking an ohel? You can't do that. Amar Ibn Chumi bar Ada, Amar Shmuel. Says Ibn Chumi bar Ada, name of Shmuel, Ba'avir de Livne. It's talking about bricks. It's talking about bricks that aren't like properly like brick and mortar together like permanently. They're just kind of stacked one on top of the other, and therefore you can, it's not like a big deal to just kind of breach it without like really destroying anything, demolishing anything. But is that really going to cut it? Rav Nachman said, Hani livne de'aisur mi binyono. If you have bricks that are left over from a building, from a construction site, shar the taltulinu v'shabata, you're allowed to move these leftover bricks, since you can sit on them, right? So they have a purpose on Shabbos, so they're not muktzeh, right? You have leftover bricks, you're not planning to use them in the construction site anymore, they're left over, you could sit on them, so they're not muktzeh. However, sharginu, but if you organize them into rows, well then, v'adeyaksinu, well then certainly if you organize them into rows, well then certainly they're muktzeh because you're not planning to use them for sitting anymore. So then certainly if you took these bricks, and even if you didn't connect them with like mortar and stuff, but you lined, you stacked them up and made a building out of it, certainly you're not planning to sit on them. So how could it be that you'd be allowed to just breach this wall and chop fruits? I mean, isn't it? Aren't these bricks muktzeh? So Reb Zer says, look, when Reb Meir says that you'd be allowed to breach the wall and chop fruits, it's only on Yom Tov. Because since we're only talking about an Isser D'Rabbanan over here, we're talking about muktzeh essentially. So because of Simchas Yom Tov, the rabbi said, look, it's okay. Reb Meir says, look, according to the rabbis, because of Simchas Yom Tov, they said you could make a breach in the wall and chop around the fruits, and that would be acceptable. Avol lo b'Shabbos, but on Shabbos that would not be allowed, right? They wouldn't let you breach the wall and chop around the fruits. Tananam Yochim Taka also learning a Beitzah like this. Rameir Omer says, Rameir Av Pochis L'Chatchila V'Notel B'Yom Tiv Uwas. We have a Beitzah that says explicitly that according to Rameir, you would be allowed to breach the wall and chop around the fruits B'Yom Tiv Amu Avalo B'Shabbos, specifically on Yom Tiv, but not on Shabbos, because of Simchas Yom Tiv you're allowed to. All right, friends, we're going to stop over here, which might be against my better judgment. Probably against my better judgment, but we're going to stop here. Today's going to be a shorter day. Tomorrow, then, Mistama is going to be a shtickle longer day. But anyways, alright, it's nice to have a shorter day, I guess, sometimes. Anyways, friends, that was the Daf Lamed Aleph of Masechta Beitzah. The first part of we started off with a Mishnah that says that you're allowed to take wood. If it's from the field, it has to be gathered together. If it's from a karpaf, this enclosed area, we saw machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. What exactly is this enclosed area? But this enclosed area, they can even be scattered. We saw the opinion of Shmuel, who says that actually even in the enclosed area, they would have to be gathered together. Rav had an interesting opinion, which is that if you leave out like leaves and stuff like that, well then you would not be allowed to gather them on Yom Tov because you're aware of the fact that the leaves are probably going to blow away, and you're not assuming that you're going to be that they're going to be there the next day. But if you leave like a weight on something to keep them there, so then you would be allowed to, they would not be the muktzeh, and you would be allowed to use them on Yom Tov. And then we saw kind of two ways to understand the machlokas between Reb Yehuda and Reb Yossi. The first way to understand it, which we seem to ultimately be assuming, is that according to Reb Yehuda, you would need two requirements for this karpaf that you could take wood from. One is that it must be close to the city, and the second one is that you have to have a key. Says Reb Yossi, look, if it's close to the city, it doesn't need to have a key. If it has a key, so then it can even be as far as the tchum allows you to go on Yom Tov. And the other way to understand the machlok is that according to Rabbi Yehuda, look, if it's close by, so then whether it has a key or not, it'll be fine. But it has to be close by. According to Rabbi Yossi, he says, look, the important thing is that you have a key. If you have a key, it could be close, it could be far, but if you don't have a key, then it can't be anywhere. So then, right, so if you don't have a key, then the karpaf doesn't work. We seem to assume like the first way to understand it, which is that according to, and like Rabbi Yossi, which is that if the karpaf is close by, it doesn't need a key. If it has a key, it can even be as far away as the Tchum Shabbos. Then we got to a very interesting new Mishnah, which is that if you want firewood on Yom Tov, so you can't use beams that mistamar you're going to be using for construction, and even if they break on Yom Tov, still it's muktzeh, because at the beginning of Yom Tov they were still proper beams. But if the beam already broke before Yom Tov, so then you would be able to use it on Yom Tov, and you'd be able to chop it up with a meat cleaver, which has a narrow blade. And then we got to a final Mishnah, which is also very interesting, that if you have some kind of like a structure of sorts, a house or something, and it's filled up with fruits, and the bricks are just laid on one on top of the other without mortar, so says Reb Meir, you'd even be allowed to just make a breach in the wall and take some of the fruits, because at that point it's it's not you're not destroying an ohel, because since it's not made with like mortar and stuff, so it's really just a question of muktzeh. And because of simchas Yom Tov, to enjoy Yom Tov, the rabbi said it's okay. You don't worry about the muktzeh. Enjoy the fruits. Friends, that was Daf Lamed Aleph of Masechta Beitzah. I hope you enjoyed. Enjoy your day. Peace out.